They say that in 99 Nights in the Forest, the missing children aren't just random victims. They say there's a deeper hidden tragedy, one reconstructed over countless hours of exploration, speculation, and community collaboration. Today we want to fully map out one of the most haunting and ambitious theories the community has built, that the deer was once the children's mother, tragically transformed through human experiments, cult rituals, or supernatural corruption, and that even now, beneath the monstrous form, fragments of maternal instinct survive. Let us begin by surveying all the lines of evidence, weaving them into a coherent argument. The strength of this theory lies in how multiple independent observations converge. Cultists, rituals, and worship. The first clue lies in the cultists themselves. They are not random enemies, they are organized, ritualistic, and seem to behave like guardians of sacred ground. Community documentation, wikis, and player map notes consistently mark certain areas as cult strongholds, locations with altars, guarded shrines, unique patrol routes, and repeated offerings over time. These are places the cultists never abandon, even under threat. In one fan wiki entry, cultists are described explicitly as adherents of the deer, protecting sacred relics and intervening in key events. If a group of humans organizes to worship a creature, it suggests relic worship, often of a figure that once had power or agency. That alone pushes us toward asking, worship of what? It's not typical to worship a mere monster. The maternal theory posits that the cultists remember, or sustain belief in, a mother figure who once existed as human. Thus their worship is directed not at a beast, but at what the beast originally represented: spatial correlation, map patterns, and artifact clusters. Next, let's look at the spatial data. Many community mappers have overlaid the locations of children's cages, the crashed plane or wreckage site, cult shrines, and deer patrol zones. These overlays reveal clusters. The artifacts and structures aren't randomly scattered. They cluster around a central locus of interest. This suggests a historical ground zero for the phenomenon. Near the wreckage, independent players consistently discover medical debris, syringes, containment units, broken glass vials, experimental pods, and partial cages. These artifacts aren't decorative, they denote human experimental intrusion into living beings. Moreover, their arrangement often leads to nearby shrine complexes, which in turn border the zones where children are held captive. When cult strongholds, artifact clusters, and child enclosures all lie within a shared region, one must infer that something happened at that locus, something central to the story. Behavioral anomalies, hesitation, inspection, and recognition. If the deer were merely a predator, we'd expect blind, unrelenting aggression, but observers have documented specific behavioral anomalies. Approaches to cages where children are held, followed not by attack but by pausing or circling, head tilts or slow movements, as though inspecting rather than immediately engaging, retreats or non-lethal delays when a player intervenes to rescue a child, watching from distance, lingering near ritual sites in silence instead of launching a charge. These aren't one-off glitches, they appear consistently in recordings across different players. Such responses show context sensitivity. The deer's decisions vary according to location, cage, shrine, wreckage, the player's actions, or events in progress. That suggests memory or emotional tendency, not random AI. In one recorded video shared by multiple users, the deer circles a ruin, glances at a collapsed altar with a toy doll on it, and then repositions as though to stand guard rather than destroy immediately. That kind of pattern supports the notion that something in that site is emotionally important to her. Symbolism, iconography, and environmental writing symbols and repeated imagery are among the strongest in-game clues. Players catalog dozens of carvings and glyphs across the forest, eyes with slashes through them often etched around cage entrances and shrines, antler shapes embracing small humanoid silhouettes, figures that look like a woman with branching horns, holding a child or standing over children, red clay or ash markings where ritual grounds meet forest paths. These glyphs tend to cluster near child enclosures or old shrines, and often near the crash site or ritual labs. They're not randomly placed decoration. They form a semiotic network of maternal imagery. Compounding that are environmental texts and lore fragments placed in key spots. The mother who once gave life now gives death. Offerings to the old mother by blood and bone. Subject M, transformation in progress, empathy suppressed. Experiments near fuselage, maternal mind reduced. These lines are short, cryptic, and scattered, but their repetition in proximity to ritual zones, cages, and the deer's path makes them more than flavor. They're puzzle pieces. For example, near one shrine deep in the woods, a wall inscription reads, "Mother Eternal, protect thy lost children." At the same site is a small cage and a carved antlered woman silhouette above it. Community threads have flagged that exact same combination. Inscription, child cage, glyph, repeated across multiple shrine sites as evidence of a pattern. Audio cues, vocal patterns, and emotional resonance interpretation of audio is tricky, but several community analysts have dug into the deer's vocalizations and found suggestive patterns. The deer emits deep, low-frequency calls at rest, more mournful than purely bestial. Near children's cages or after ritual site disturbances, her calls shift to harsher, layered tones, sometimes echoing as if overlaid with human vocal harmonics. When the owl appears or a protective event triggers, the deer's roars occasionally fade or lower, rather than rising in aggression. Some fans have isolated spectrograms from deer calls and commented that parts of the frequency domain reflect modulated harmonics that mimic human vocal modulation. The argument is not definitive, but if the designers embedded such layered audio intentionally, it supports a fragmented identity, part beast, part human, psychological and mythic logic. Let's step back and reason from psychological and mythic principles. If a human mind is fused into an animal form, the result would likely be conflicted behavior, protection in moments of clarity, aggression under stress, and strong emotional triggers tied to familiar stimuli, children, ritual sites, reminders of home. This dualism matches exactly the deer's observed inconsistencies. Calm hesitations in some encounters, sudden violent bursts in others. At a mythic level, many folklore traditions warn of animals that were once human souls, sacrificing themselves or transformed by guilt, grief, or magic. The maternal archetype is powerful. A mother's identity is among the strongest emotional templates in human mythology. To twist that into a monster gives you a being that is both horrific and tragic. That duality is exactly what modulates the player's emotional response. Causality, predictive power, and player experience. One hallmark of a strong theory is predictive capacity. If the deer is once a mother, the theory predicts rescuing children or cleansing ritual sites should reduce deer aggression or elicit more hesitation. The deer will exhibit the most hesitation at sites most strongly tied to maternal symbols, glyph clusters, shrine combinations, inscriptions. Cultists will defend those symbolic nodes more fiercely, while avoiding all-out destruction of child enclosures. Player approaches with non-violent, restorative action should provoke calmer responses than all-out confrontation. Anecdotal community reports confirm many of these. Players who protect altars and avoid killing low-level cultists often note fewer lethal deer attacks. Some report that after rescuing a child at a shrine with strong maternal glyphs, the fog lifts momentarily or the ambient tension decreases. These are not universal facts. Players differ in experience, but enough repeated instances point toward a consistent pattern. That level of actionable result strengthens the theory beyond mere speculation. Counterarguments, skepticism, and theory limits. No theory is perfect. Let's address critical challenges. There is no official cutscene or developer statement confirming a transformation from mother to deer. Many symbols and glyphs are ambiguous. Crossed eyes or antlers could mean other things. Blindness, sacrifice, forest spirits. Audio analysis is subject to interpretation and may suffer bias from expectation. Disparate player experiences sometimes contradict the theory, e.g. some players never see hesitation behavior. The hypothesis must rely heavily on interpretive reading of environmental clues, which may be subject to design constraints or aesthetic choices rather than narrative intent. Still, absence of official confirmation does not invalidate interpretive reasoning. In many richly constructed games, community lore building fills gaps in the narrative. The strength of this theory lies in its coherence, not in definitive proof, narrative implications, and emotional resonance. If this theory holds, it transforms 99 Nights in the Forest from a survival horror game into a tragic myth. The player becomes someone not just fighting monsters, but unraveling a fractured motherhood. Each rescue is not just mission progression, but an emotional act, restoring shards of a broken soul. The final confrontation is not destruction, but reconciliation, or in the most poignant reading, release. A powerful imagined ending might play like this. The player cleanses the final shrine, rescues the last child, and the deer collapses. Her form flickers between beast and woman, eyes glistening, antlers dissolving, and in her final breath whispers a name, then dissolves into mist, leaving only silence and empty cages. That ending reframes the game as a meditation on loss, guilt, love, and the cost of meddling with nature. In conclusion, the maternal transformation theory that the deer was once the children's mother rests on multiple converging strands. The ritual behavior of cultists, spatial clustering of artifacts, selective deer behavior, repeating symbolic glyphs, emotive audio patterns, psychological logic of identity conflict, predictive power in gameplay, and consistent community observations. Yes, some pieces are interpretive, but together they form a narrative more comprehensive and emotionally resonant than any alternate hypothesis I've encountered. The next time you explore that fog-drenched forest, listen closely for her calls, trace the glyphs on cavern walls, and watch the deer's hesitation near a cage. You may begin to see not just a monster, but a mother, calling out for her children in the darkness. And if you liked this theory and you have one of your own, or one that you looked up in an internet forum, write it in the comments, and if it makes sense, I'll be analyzing it in another video. That's all for me, and I'll see you in the next video.